Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. Looking real good.
Amateur Traveler, episode 304. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about a rugged sea coast, green hills, and hill forts as we go to County Kerry in Ireland.
I got to see one more cathedral. I got to sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Before we get into this week's interview, I do have three news stories for you. The first two are related. Spirit Airlines has just added a $34 fee to buy your tickets online. So if you don't talk to a person and just use an automated system, you'll have to pay $34 more. Of course, they'll also charge you if you call them, so you really just have to go to the airport to try and get something without fees. And by the way, that may be related to why Spirit Airlines was just fined $50,000 for violating federal aviation laws and rules prohibiting deceptive price advertising in air travel. They were fined for advertising on Twitter $9 fares, but not mentioning taxes and fees. And then if you have an Amazon Kindle, especially the kind that has e-ink, not the new Kindle Fire, you may be interested to know, or you should be interested to know, that apparently they can be damaged by going through X-ray scanners at airports. It's not clear what you need to do, possibly leave it at home. We don't know how common it is, but there have been reports that the e-ink Kindle can be damaged by airport X-rays. For links to all three of those stories, check out the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. I'd like to welcome the show Jessie Voigts, who's the publisher of WanderingEducators.com and has come to talk to us about County Kerry in Ireland. Jessie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So, County Kerry, when were you there and why should someone go?
Oh, we just love County Kerry. I've been inspired for years to go to Ireland from one of my very favorite travel sites, Irish Fireside.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's so great to read about Ireland there. And we went to County Kerry for 3 weeks last fall.
Okay. And first of all, let's put County Kerry on a map. We're not talking about the area around Dublin.
Nope, we were far away from Dublin. In fact, it's easier if you fly into the Shannon Airport, and then County Kerry is only about an hour and a half south of it. So if you look at a map of Ireland and Dublin is on the far east side, the lower east side, draw a straight line across and then go down a little bit, and there's County Kerry.
Okay. And what was it about County Kerry, first of all, that attracted you?
Well, I've always heard that it was one of the most beautiful places in the world. The Ring of Kerry in County Kerry is one of the most scenic drives in the world. And so I thought, oh my gosh, we love driving trips and I love to take photos, and this could just be a perfect thing. And then the extra bonus is because we love water and oceans and we always try to plan our vacations and travels around water. There's a lot of water around Ireland. And so I thought, okay, this is the place for us to go.
Okay. And what were the highlights? Did it live up to your expectation, first of all? Is it, in fact, the prettiest place you've been to?
Yes, definitely, by far. And, with a caveat, everybody says in Ireland it's going to rain every day. And that is true. It rains every day, but the rain is short. And then the rest of the time you might have sunshine or cloudy, but it's clear and just such a beautiful place. So, yes.
So you're saying part of the reason that it's pretty is it's very, very green, I'm guessing, from the rain every day.
Yes, it's very, very green. And we were there in September. So I thought, coming from Michigan, I thought, well, there might be fall colors but that was totally wrong. What happened was it's a microclimate, being an island, and it's very, very green. And I was amazed by how beautiful it was. Highlights of our trip. Well, this is the coolest thing. We rented a cottage right on the water. And our daughter is 9 years old, and she is a mermaid. And so she said, Mom, I have to get in the water. And I'm thinking, well, it's September, it's going to be cold. And yes, indeed, it was cold. But we went swimming a few times. But what was more fascinating to me was that we could see the rhythms of the tide, and we learned the fishermen that went out, and we would wave to them when they went out, and wave to them when they came back. And there were seals on the rocks by our place, and beautiful birds and herons. And then the funniest thing that was so odd was right behind us was a big field of sheep. And so you'd hear the waves, and then you'd hear, bah. It was very incongruous, but I did choose this place because I wanted a more rural location for us to slow down. I didn't want the hecticness of Dublin. We needed time to slow down and be with nature and explore more. So definitely where we stayed, and it was a cute little cottage called Pier Cottage, and it was part of old Coast Guard building. That's where we loved, and we loved it so much. So that was our very first highlight. The second highlight that we had was we took a pony cart ride, which seems so cliche, of course, but we took a pony cart ride through the Gap of Dunloe. And if you're not familiar with the Gap of Dunloe, it is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to. And it's a narrow little passageway between two mountains. The first is McGillicuddy's Reeks, and the second is the Purple Mountain. And so you take this horse cart ride through this tiny, tiny path, and people live there. Occasionally you see a house with a car, or, people walking and biking. It's a very, very famous path. So we took the cart ride through the Gap of Dunloe, and you end at a place called Lord Brandon's Cottage. And I was very surprised by Lord Brandon's cottage. It was like a patio with a cafe in it. And so you wait there and you have coffee or tea or whatever you like, and then you take a boat back to Killarney, is where we started from. And so you take a boat back through all these beautiful lakes that are just so spectacular, I would say. But for us, when we went back on this boat, and the front was loaded with people's bikes because they rode their bikes there, and then the back was loaded with us people, maybe 15 of us, and then a dog, the boat guy's dog. And it was a beautiful, perfect storm. And so he brought out all these tarps, and we all had rain gear on, and it was the hardest rain I've ever had in my life, let alone in Ireland, where usually it's a little more gentle. So the boat was filling with water, and we were still 40 minutes away. And so it was very stressful, and at that point our daughter fell asleep. And I thought, okay, well, if we go down, we'll save her then. But anyway, it was an adventure, that's for sure. But the Gap of Dunloe was definitely a highlight of our trip.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were talking about the Ring of Kerry and that pony cart ride being a little touristy. My impression is that this is not an undiscovered part of Ireland, that it's very popular with tourists. Did you feel that it's getting spoiled for its popularity, or was it easy for you to get away from the buses of tourists?
Anytime you drive the Ring of Kerry, you take your life in your hands with these buses. I'm telling you. I mean, on one side, you have maybe 2 or 3 stones made into a very short wall and then cliffs of death. And then on the other side, you have this huge bus barreling down on you. So, yeah, the buses are scary. And in fact, I would encourage anyone not to take a bus tour so that everybody else could live safely. But at parts of the Ring of Kerry and in County Kerry, yeah, it is very touristy, especially in the town of Killarney, where Muckross House is, and a lot of people go there to see the incredible house and the gardens and the Killarney National Park, and there's a lot of shopping in Killarney. So when we were there to start our Gap of Dunlow tour, or we did go to Muckross House, I just felt swarmed by tourists, like being a part of a crowd. But because we chose to rent a house in a less popular part of County Kerry, when we were doing local things, there weren't that many people around, and often local business owners would say, "Oh, welcome." Like, usually the only people they have there are walkers. And I didn't know this, but a lot of people walk the whole Ring of Kerry, which is huge. So that was amazing to me. But yeah, you can get away from the tourists if you choose not to go to Killarney or the main areas.
And when you say walk the Ring of Kerry, roughly how far are you talking about there? I want to say that that's like 100 miles or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that. Should I look it up here?
We could look it up later.
Okay. I know that if you drive it and stop for lunch and dinner at a couple of places, you can do it in a day if you don't stop a whole lot. But one of the things that I like to do and why we chose to spend so much time in one place was that we could truly get to know the area. And so if you're not walking it and you're just driving it, you might think, oh, let's go to Kenmare, and then let's go to the Skellig Islands, and let's go to Valencia Island, let's go to the Dingle Peninsula, and let's go to Killarney, and then you're done. But there's so much more to County Kerry than that. One of my very favorite places that we went to several times was just a few miles up the road from us, and it's called Stag Fort. And it's one of the best preserved examples of the old stone ring forts in Ireland.
Sure.
And it was built about 100 BC, they think. And it's so funny. You drive along this tiny road, even tinier than the regular Ring of Kerry road, which is very small to begin with. And you brush through these huge overgrown fuchsia bushes as you're going down this road. And then you end up in this parking lot at this farmer's land. And there's a little sign on the gate that says €1 donation to help preserve it. And you open the gate, you walk across this little bridge with the water gurgling underneath, and you walk up a hill. And then right there, you feel like you're in history. And you're nudged aside by sheep. So you kind of have to watch where you're walking. And then you go through a very small door with a lintel on top, and you walk in and you think, oh my gosh, who was the clan chief that built this? And how many people did he have in here? And tents or structure buildings. And then you can walk up these tiny little stair rampways to the top of the circular walls. And he can survey his domain, or he can see who's coming to attack him. And so we spent many hours pretending that we were the clan chief and defending our fort. It was really, really cool.
Now, I'm going to guess that was a highlight for your daughter.
Oh, yes.
What was her biggest highlight since you had a 9-year-old with you?
Her biggest highlight was the ocean.
Okay.
I mean, we had a big yard, and then at the end of the yard, there was some really large boulders where you could walk down onto the stone beach. And when we were at the house, 90% of the time, she was out on the beach, looking through seaweed, finding shells, looking through the binoculars and seeing what she could see, waving to the fishermen. We would take a little rowboat across the little inlet and look for more things there. And then one day, this was so cool, we looked out the back window, and there were people there digging in the inlet. So I went out and I was like, what are you guys doing? Well, it was this French couple, and my French is not that great, so we mostly did hand gestures, but they were shrimping.
Oh.
And they were vacationing there, and they come there every year, and they go shrimping. And so we learned how to shrimp. Who knew, right? You stick a bucket under the seaweed, and you jiggle it up, and then there's shrimp in your bucket. So we tried shrimping too, and we caught one. We were so excited. But yeah, we live on a lake here in Michigan, and I didn't know that she'd be that into the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
But she was. She just totally wanted to be in the ocean, and when we went and did things, she wanted to do things that were on the ocean, and it was really, really wonderful for her.
Excellent. What surprised you about County Kerry?
The buses.
Yeah. Sorry, I could have told you that one.
I know. And, I read it, and I thought, okay, and I've heard pictures about people saying, you're going to bust a hubcap and lose a mirror. And I think, really? Because that's not really a bad driver. He's a great driver. But you do. There's stone walls, things like that. So I was surprised by that. And I was also surprised by the fact that you hear so many things about Irish hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in the rural areas, there isn't that much chance to meet people, except maybe in a pub, which we didn't go to because we had a child with us. But I expected more opportunities to see the famed Irish hospitality in action.
Mm-hmm.
In other parts of Ireland, when we stayed at B&Bs, situations like that, we definitely saw the Irish hospitality. But for living somewhere rural in your own rented house, there wasn't a lot of interaction, and I was surprised by that.
Although I think you might have been surprised at a pub, which might be a little different than a bar that we'd think of in the U.S. I mean, it is a public house, and so it's a little different thing.
Yes, and we did have several meals in pubs.
Mm-hmm.
That was fine, but we weren't ever there when there was music or gathering, like sports gathering or something. It was just stop by for a meal. So,
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think we had the quintessential Irish pub experience.
Now, you also mentioned one of the spots that you didn't explain. You talked about a house that was an incredible home, but you didn't mention what that house was.
Oh, that is Muckross House, and it is very famous, and it's definitely a must-see. If you're going to do something touristy in County Kerry, you need to go to Muckross House, and it's located in Killarney, and it's part of Killarney National Park. It's a beautiful old stone mansion, and the original owners had noticed that Queen Victoria was going to come visit, and so they spent years and almost all of their money making the house better for Queen Victoria to come visit. And then she came and visited, and they thought, oh, maybe we'll get a peerage out of this or something, benefits. But right away, afterwards, like 1 or 2 or 3 months after her visit, her husband, Prince Albert, died. And if you know the story, she was just consumed by grief. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, probably everything was forgotten. So then they sold the house to Arthur Guinness of the Guinness beer fame. Mm-hmm. And then the Bourne family from the United States bought it. Their daughter was marrying an Irishman. And so they bought it, and they lived there for a while, too. And then, finally, they gave it to Ireland, and said, here's this huge estate, and please take care of it. It's a gift from us. So now everybody goes there. They have beautiful gardens, amazing gardens. They have not like a folk park like at Bunratty, but they have a place where you can go and see how people worked back in the day. But what was most amazing to me, and we took a tour of Muckross House, was the difference between upstairs and downstairs. The beautiful rooms that the nobility lived in, and then the dank, cold basement where the servants lived, and the bells that the people would ring for the rooms. And then the kitchen was so huge, but then the guide said maybe there would be 30 to 40 people working in there to prepare the meals. It was truly a contrast for us to see.
Interesting.
Yes, it's very cool. Definitely a must-see.
Was there anything that you were told by guidebooks or by Corey over at Irish Fireside, you've got to go see this, and you were a little disappointed?
Only one thing we were disappointed in, and that was everybody, and not Irish Fireside, because I don't think that they mentioned this part, but everybody said, oh, you have to go see the statue of Charlie Chaplin in Waterville. So amazing. So I'm thinking, okay. So we drove there one day on our way to the Skellig Chocolate Factory, which is a good thing. But anyways, we drove there one day, and there was the statue of Charlie Chaplin, and people were getting out and taking their pictures with it. And I'm thinking, well, let's just drive on. Chocolate's more important. So, yeah, that was a disappointment. But, mostly Ireland lived up to its expectations.
And then the flip side of that question, what did you feel like was a discovery? What did you feel like? I didn't know this was going to be here, and everyone should have told us to go here instead of the Charlie Chaplin statue.
Oh, the housekeeper for the big house
Mm-hmm.
that was part of where we were staying said, you must go to this local beach. It's called Derrynane Beach. And it's part of Derrynane House, which was the home of Daniel O'Connor, who was known as the Liberator. And he changed Irish history. He really stood up for people that were underserved or ignored. And he said, this isn't right that if you're Catholic, you don't get a vote. You're discriminated against. So anyways, Daniel O'Connell is called the Liberator. And his house is called Derrynane House. And it's a beautiful house. Definitely a good thing to see. But if you snake past the house on this another tiny little road that you would only know if a local told you, you snake past the house and you go down a little bit, and there's a public beach called Derrynane Beach. This is the treasure. And you can go swimming there, and we saw surfers there and fishermen. And if you go at low tide, you can cross across, a little sandbar to a place called Abbey Island. And it's so beautiful. And it's like the epitome of an Irish cemetery. There's an old ruined church with no roof and ancient tombstones, the old Celtic crosses. But there's also new tombstones, one from last year when somebody died in the sea. And so it's obviously a vibrant piece of community history. And I thought, this is Ireland right here. Locals enjoying themselves, and also this is where their family is. I would really recommend Derrynane Beach and Abbey Island to anybody that goes to County Kerry.
And you mentioned locals and that you didn't get a chance to interact with as much as you were hoping. Is there one, though, that you connected with that really left an impression?
Three.
Okay.
The first is we did a profile of an artist on our site. Every month we feature an artist of the month, and we profiled an incredible artist whose name is Kara Turner. And we went to her shop, and she makes the most whimsical pottery designs. And what we ordered from her, this is so cool, and she made it for us, was this pottery house of Pure Cottage where we were staying at, and then the three figures of us in the front of it. And she made Lily into a mermaid. And so I love, we always try to support local artists wherever we go. And we also try to highlight their work and share with the world how important it is to get art and inspiration from all over the world. So she was one. No, the second Irish person that we loved was a woman called Jane Urquhart, and she lived just up the drive from us. And I have to tell you, she makes the best croissants I've ever had in my whole life. And she runs a bakery, and it's amazing. And we would say, we need 6 croissants, and they're huge croissants. And she's like, really? You're going to eat 2 each? And we're like, we would eat more if we if we could. So she was amazing and definitely an excellent baker and businesswoman. And then the third one was the housekeeper, Catherine, who told us about Derrynane Beach and tried to arrange a trip for us to the Skellig Islands because Ed and Lily wanted to climb up to the top of the 600 stairs and see the stone beehives of the monks. But every time that it was available, it was a huge storm blowing in or the waves were bad because it was nearing the end of their season. And so we never did get to go to the Skellig Islands. But indeed, those 3 people changed our stay for us.
And so it sounds like in terms of whether you might recommend go maybe a little earlier in the year than you did, a little more towards summer.
I think probably you would have the best time in the summer, especially if you're in a more rural area like we were, where there's not a whole lot of tourist crowds to fight. It's definitely a better idea.
Okay. You talk about the area being pretty. Let's get a little more specific. You're standing at the prettiest spot, looking at the prettiest scene. Tell me where you're standing and what you're looking at.
Oh my gosh. Well, there's so many. You could just turn around and it's there. One very, very beautiful spot is past Waterville, but before you get to Port McGee on the Ring of Kerry. So on the west corner of the drive, there's a little turnoff, and I don't remember what it's called in English, but it's a really long name. And you can pull off there, and there's an ice cream truck, and as you're there, in all views, you either see the mountains with the green flowing into the sea and the beautiful white houses, or if you look the other way, there's another old stone fort and more mountains and more beautiful greens. It's just quintessential Ireland. It's so beautiful there.
Excellent. One thing that makes you laugh and say only in Kerry.
Tourists, I guess. We went to Kenmare, and we went to the Kenmare Market on Wednesdays, and it was amazing. And there's this really cool guy that has this huge olive cart and fresh cheeses that he's made and all these things. And so you're thinking, oh my gosh, what can I take home for lunch and dinner or a picnic on Darien Beach? And you forget how rude the tourists can be, shoving each other aside. And I suppose if we lived in a city the whole time we were there, we would be used to it. But because we had our own cottage and because we were off on our own and doing our own thing, we forgot. We forgot that could happen.
Okay. Finish this thought. The 3 things you have to remember to do to say that you've been to the Ring of Kerry are what?
Pony cart ride through the Gap of Dunlow.
Okay.
Eating chocolate from the Skellig Chocolate Company. And being squished up against a stone wall and fearing for your life
And
as the tour bus comes along.
Okay. As we go to wind this down, is there any other tip that you would give to somebody who's going to do the trip that you did?
I would definitely recommend researching your rental car company. We went with Dooley, but Ireland has this crazy super CDW insurance, and there's a lot online about it. Definitely get it.
Since you may be coming back without a mirror.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is that when you rent a car, make sure that all your charges are covered up front. And we heard and read so many horror stories about people thinking that they were getting one rate and then coming to the airport and seeing, oh my gosh, there's another $2,000 tacked on, or surprise like that. So I would say that that's pretty important.
Okay.
Not exciting.
That's all right. Any money-saving tips you would leave with somebody?
Wow. I think if you're not in a city like we weren't, there's a lot that you can do that's local and free and outside. County Kerry is really an outdoor paradise. You can pay to do some outdoor activities like boat trips or scuba diving or kayaking or water skiing or whatever, all of the outdoor things. But many of the outdoor things are free. Fishing, millions of people go there to fish, millions of people go there to hike. And we just sat in our front yard and enjoyed the view. It was so beautiful. So I would definitely say get outside. That's free.
Excellent. And as we go to wind this down, last 2 questions. Finish this thought. You really know you're in County Kerry when what?
You really know you're in County Kerry when the rain doesn't faze you.
Okay. That sounds like Kauai to me, actually. Okay. And if you had to summarize County Kerry in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
Beautiful, green, happy.
Excellent. Jessie, if people wanted to read more about your travels, where can they go?
They can come to our site at wanderingeducators.com. We have written so many articles about our trip there. It was just really the trip of a lifetime, and I recommend anybody to put it on their bucket list. It's an amazing place.
And we'll put a link to that in the show notes, as well as to Irish Fireside, which Jessie mentioned as being part of the inspiration for this trip. Jessie, thanks so much for coming on the show and for telling us some more of your love for Ireland.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
First of all, in news of the community, I want to apologize for not having an episode of The Amateur Traveler last week. I actually recorded an episode, a wonderful episode with Don George, travel writer and editor, and unfortunately Don's microphone had a problem, and I just could not put out that episode. So I'm hoping Don and I will get a chance to re-record that without the microphone problems. It's an episode about the Champagne region of France. In news, the community received an email from Jessica, which I have put as a comment on the episode 270. With her permission, travel to Brooklyn in New York City. And Jessica, who writes a blog about Paris, had moved to Paris from Brooklyn and recommended some additional things to see and do in Brooklyn. The Brooklyn Heights Promenade overlooking the East River offers a breathtaking view of the Statue of Liberty, Lower Manhattan, and the Brooklyn Bridge. It has been featured in movies such as Annie Hall and Moonstruck and is part of Brooklyn's historical preservation district, lined with mansions and greenery on one side and the amazing views on the other. This is a romantic spot favored for strolls by locals and visitors alike. Montague Street leads up to the promenade, which is a nice shopping and brunch area. She also recommended Cobble Hill Carroll Gardens, a quaint yet lively area with strong Italian influences that is being slowly overtaken by French immigrants. There are bilingual French-American schools, lovely French restaurants such as Provence en Boîte, Robin de Bois, and Bar Tabac, who get together each year to celebrate Bastille Day with a penquet tournament on Smith Street, one of the main restaurants and bar streets in the area. Smith Street is also the home to a trifecta of stores all owned by the same people. Stinky Brooklyn, a cheese shop with the widest variety of domestic and foreign cheeses I've ever seen in the U.S. The Jake Walk, a wine bar that also serves tapas and specialty cocktails. And Smith and Vine, a specialty wine shop with friendly employees happy to help with a pairing. Cobble Hill and Carroll Gardens has a vast selection of ethnic restaurants, Cubana Cafe for Cuban food, Zaytunes for Moroccan, Fragoli for homemade Italian, the French restaurants mentioned above, Char 5 and Buttermilk Channel for upscale southern fare, and Lobos for Tex-Mex at its best, blood orange margaritas and tasty shrimp tacos. For drinks, there is Zombie Hill, which is famous for the frozen zombie and its $5 Mai Tais and large backyard seating area. Camp, which has the Dirty Girl Scout cocktail. I don't even want to know about that. And it's great DJ and Seol, a traditional Irish pub with a jukebox, plentiful seating, and inexpensive pints. If you want to go upstairs, Clover Club has a completely 1920s style decor and an old-fashioned cocktails to match. Get an old-fashioned or the Clover Club's signature cocktail for a treat. For dessert, the chocolate room is divine, especially for its house-made chocolates or chocolate beer float. Sweet Melissa has delicious baked goods, try a bee sting, and ice cream, and the Brooklyn Pharmacy is an old-fashioned soda fountain with classic sundaes, shakes, and of course the egg cream. The best thing on the menu is the Sundae of Broken Dreams with vanilla ice cream, caramel sauce, pretzels, and whipped cream. All in all, Cobble Hill and Carroll Gardens are a food lover's dream and worth the trip on the F train from Manhattan to Warren Street or Carroll Street. All the best, Jessica. Thanks so much, Jessica. And again, there's a reason why I asked Jessica for permission to put that on the end of the Brooklyn episode so that everyone could share that information. With that, we're going to wrap up this episode of The Amateur Traveler, which will come out on time for a change. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com or send me an email to host@amateurtraveler.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Chris2X. And be sure to check out the Facebook community. I believe we've given away 5 different travel books this week at the Facebook community, facebook.com/amateurtraveler. They're first come, first serve. You just have to agree to write a review for the Amateur Traveler blog. As always, thanks so much for listening.